Why is music production so male centered? I saw this conversation floating around the internet and I thought to bring it to YouTube because I want us to have this conversation as to why we think it has to be so male driven. So, from my perspective, when you think of a woman in a music production role, it's usually a leadership role. And, a lot of people just have pre existing, rebellion against a woman leader. How dare she tell me what to do in a session? Because when you, for example, my one of my mentors in recording, his name was Ron DiSilvestro. He could literally have any rock band, any hip hop artist walk through the front door, any celebrity, and he can handle them and know exactly what they need and how to record their album or their song. He could set up the mics. He could do everything. Now, I'm sure a woman is just as skilled, if not more skilled, than he could be. The same, clients come in, celebrities, a band or whatever, but they just disregard what she has to say because she can't reach a natural form of aggression that men have. Because men have higher testosterone on the broader spectrum, they can, demonstrate more aggression. Usually, here's the sub kind of conscious thing around this is that usually when men kind of buck up against other men, they kind of poke their chest out. That's when you see, like if you guys watch Love Island, you see this all the time, or Bachelor in Paradise. The men come on the island, they think they're hot stuff, and they get sat down by the other men because men, they put themselves in a hierarchy of respect. Most, that respect is from their physicality. How strong is that person? How much of a leader are they? You don't necessarily have to be super strong to be a leader, but in most cases, the man who's the biggest, who can actually hold his own, is usually higher in the hierarchy. And, applying that to the music production space, when you have gangsters coming in the front door, people who get rowdy, drinking in the studios, all types of stuff, you have to have a level of aggression that can settle down nonsense because that comes with the job, unfortunately, as a recording engineer and a music producer in most cases. But we're kind of broadening the definition of music producer. So historically, I think that's the reason why most men were put in that position, because it's seen again, it's almost like a doctor, how a doctor, why is there so many male doctors and not as many female doctors back in the day, women doctors? And it comes down to that leadership thing. It's just seen as the person who can illustrate that aggression to, exact justice seems to be the person to lead. And that's simply based off of that aggression. And so just historically, what I'm trying to say is that there were gender roles in the music production space, but also too, I want to think about this and say, wouldn't they rather the women be in the front? I'm sure there's people who love recording, as a woman, or love being a music producer as a woman, or love what else is kind of behind the scenes, vocal production, recording engineering, mixing engineering. I'm sure there are women who love to do it. And, we've seen them pop up in our music production space. And hopefully the companies keep putting them in the forefront. Because at the end of the day, when you guys are watching YouTube, it's like, would you rather watch me who's just looking like a guy? Or would you rather watch a girl do something that you can do and better and teach you something? I just think that girls have more of an appeal visually speaking. Guys tend to have more of an appeal as far as their aggression levels, how they can control other men. Whereas I think women have an appeal as far as like, physicality, but more of a visual aesthetic approach. It doesn't take away from their skills, however. So I want to make that very clear. It does not take away from their skills. There's women way smarter than you guys, including myself. I'm sure there's a Berkeley student watching this right now who's like, yeah, I know music theory like the back of my hand. I know a girl who's doing on YouTube music theory, and it went so deep that it was like microtonal music theory to the level where it's beyond the 12 keys on in your octave. It goes like into keys below the keys. I was like, all right, she got that. But then we have to think about education in general. If it's a risky role to go in as a music producer, most people who hop into the music industry, they want to be the forefront people, the artists, the DJs, the glamour people, because they're seen and they can build a personal brand. That's why Murder Beats has a huge brand. Metro Boomin has a huge brand because these guys are seen. DJ Mustard has a huge brand. DJ Mustard. Okay. And it's because they put themselves out there as if they're artists. And that is the key to, expanding your personal brand. And I think a lot of people who hop into the music space and the music industry, they want to be the forefront person. That's not always the case. If I'm going to school for music production, again, it's highly risky to just be a background person. So when people are going to university for music production, it's just a risk that maybe isn't worth it for people going into college level education. And also too, we have to keep in mind that the traditional music industry run by, good old boys, okay, is an industry full of gatekeeping. Okay. It is a people business. I can't illustrate all the bias in this one video, but I'm sure there's bias, racial bias, gender bias, how you identify your gender role. Some people may even look away from people who are not, considering male or female as their gender. And I forget all of the actual acronyms, so I don't want to butcher their culture. So they may, these gatekeepers are people who they think they're weeding out talent and people who aren't serious. But to us, they're actually weeding out the people who need to be in position to open up the doors for somebody else. The only problem with that equation is that we don't control those gates. We don't control that castle. The castle has gates for a reason. It's not our kingdom. And we're trying to go into another kingdom, trying to control the kingdom. And it's just better to build your own kingdom, in my opinion, than to go to somebody else's kingdom and try to tell them how to run their kingdom. So that is why I have a traditional stance on not just independence, but sovereignty from the traditional music industry. And I teach you guys the skills on how to build your music business and build your personal brand so that you don't have to rely on those three companies, Sony, Warner, Universal, to control your entire career. Also, too, we have to think about in the past, resources were distributed in different ways. We can go into like really deep sociological issues, but, women weren't being paid the same as men. This is proven through data. And when you have that kind of bias, they can't take as many risks. Okay. And I'm not saying that's the current status today. I don't know the data for today, but I do know when I grew up, women were traditionally known to not get paid as much as a man. And their thought process as a boss, or however it worked, was that if they can keep the woman a little bit lower in pay, they won't leave the man of the house. That's the most BS thought process I've ever heard. Like if somebody works hard and deserves their pay them. Like I don't care if it's a woman or a guy, pay the person. Okay. But regardless of my thoughts on it, historically you have people who are paid less and they still need the same equipment that we need, the MPC 2000, the FL Studios of the world, the plugins, the mixing consoles, whatever they needed to do the job. But they're working on a salary that's, 50% less or whatever the difference was. I'm not sure the exact numbers. So there's that history as well. So we can't just disregard that as if that doesn't matter, because music production is very, 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 very expensive. I can tell you guys I have over 2,000 plugins. I mean, I have gear in my room, but that's not what I spent my money on the most. It was actually plugins and just running the online business. That costs a lot of money. Okay. And just going back to the culture point is, in music production, here's something that I'm seeing, and it's going away. So this is good that it's not as prevalent. But back when I was kind of coming up in the SoundClick days, any woman who tried to become a music producer, all the guys would be like, oh, she's only getting sales because she looks good, or guys are trying to, flaunt or whatever, fawn over her. She's only getting paid because she has, that kind of shirt on. And it's like, they're pointing out the thing that they don't have as the reason why somebody's doing more successful than them or being more successful than them. So let's take it out of the woman equation and say Busy Works Beats. They'll say stuff like, oh, he only gets more views because he lies in his videos. He only gets more views because he uses clickbait, because I'm using keywords. He only gets more views because he talks to beginners. And it's like, there can be part truth in that, it depends on what you call clickbait. The whole internet runs on clickbait if you want to make that argument. And then if you want to make the argument of talking to beginners, well, every time I try to talk to intermediate people, they think they know everything and I can't teach them. So I have to talk to people in the beginning and the people who are super advanced. The middle people are not the people to talk to. They think they know everything. And so what I'm saying is we can apply that same logic, the kind of writing off somebody else's success to both men and women, and I think the excuse for women automatically is, oh, she's a girl, so guys are going to want to do business with her. Oh, because she's a girl, or just because they look good or whatever it is. And, to me, that's just projecting a reason why somebody is where they are. Because if they feel like they're doing everything right and they're getting the results they don't want, they have to demonize somebody on the outside to justify their current position. So they say, oh, I'm here and they're there because they did something evil because I'm doing everything right. And I'm not where I want to be. So that's how they justify their position in life. Unfortunately, that's how it goes down. And, we tried to be the seed of good. See, I didn't claim this back in the day, but in 2020, we heard some crazy stories off of Clubhouse. I mean, I forget how the conversation even led there. It was a music business room, and somehow somebody hopped on the stage on Clubhouse and was telling stories about how they were mistreated in studios, girls getting grabbed on in studios, getting, not blackmailed, but like, guys wouldn't release their song if the girl didn't do something that the guy wanted, and just all types of manipulative stuff. And I was like, I was like, if I ever find any man who's ever mistreated a woman in this way, I will not only have him canceled, we will find him. And I left it at that. And I said, if we want to make change, then we need to go to these companies and we need to apply the change. And immediately after I heard all these stories, it wasn't just one person and it wasn't just a sob story. It was this person told their story. The other person felt comfortable, told their story. Third person, it was so many girl stories. I was like, how are people getting away with this? Cannot be done. Under my authority, I cannot allow this to be done. And so I immediately stepped out. I went to all the company, or not all the companies, but some companies who were the top companies. And we started running women-focused campaigns because I said they need to be highlighted, because behind the scenes, when they're trying to work up the rungs like everybody else, they're being manipulated at step 2, taken advantage at step 3, manipulated at step 4, held back at step 5. So it takes the corporations to step in and give them a direct line of access. No more going up through the rungs like everybody else, because they were being mistreated on a crazy scale. And if I had all the stories, I would give you guys those stories. It wasn't a recorded room, so I don't have the audio for it. But that's the reason why we reached out to these companies. And right after we reached out, you saw women being featured in, the content, featured in the ads, featured in the forefront. They were put into the forefront. Okay. And that came out of that small conversation. I don't ever want to take credit for that, because I was like, this is abysmal that people even let this happen. This is not Hollywood. We're in the music production space. People mistreating people should not go anywhere further in this culture, because we're too loving for that to actually happen. And I was like, anybody manipulating women in this culture, we need to find them. And that's just that on that. So moving forward, that's what actually came out of it. More campaigns with top companies with women being put in the forefront. Good. Who wants to watch a sweaty guy making beats all day long? I don't know about you guys, but come on. Like, if it's not a tutorial, you're just watching a sweaty dude with lights behind him making beats. Sometimes I got to question you as a viewer. All right, but there's many other reasons why I think women aren't represented in this space. It could be interest. Maybe girls want to be DJs. Maybe they want to be singers. Traditionally, women were the leaders of worship singing. They led the singing of the church or the religious group. So that's more of a traditional woman type of role. But again, there's a lot of seeds and a lot of reasons why stuff happened. I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I guess lastly, we talked about the workplace dynamics. Really, it's very difficult for people who have the power to hire someone not to demonstrate that power. They use the manipulation of, oh, you don't want your paycheck next week, I guess, if you don't do X, Y, and Z for me. Very subtle manipulative power moves these guys do most of the time when they hire women. And so, we have to address it at the root. The main root is that wherever you get your money from, you have to answer to that person. And if you're answering to Sony, Universal, or Warner, you're under their, authority. If you make your own money and you answer to God and you serve your people, then you don't answer to any man. And that's where I want to tell you guys to move forward to, is serve God directly, serve your people through God. Therefore, you have nobody above you to start, doing the puppeteer strings. All right, guys, share this with a friend. I want to have this conversation about where are the women in music production? Not even where are they, but just why do we think it's so bro-ish, like almost like a fraternity? So I'm curious what you guys think. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.